Everyone has some sort of a closet that's become too small. A closet is no place to live, and I want to support as many people as I can in stepping out of that prison into the fullness of life that's waiting for them on the other side of that closet door. I'm Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching. Join me in listening to these Coming Out Chronicles. Get curious about your story, and then see what good things are waiting for you on the other side of your closet door. Randy, it's lovely to have you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Will you introduce yourself a bit to us?
Sure. My name is Randy Boissonnault, and I'm a former member of Parliament right here in Edmonton Centre, and a former special advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on LGBTQ2 issues. It depends how far back you want to go, Nancy. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded Literacy Without Borders, an organization that's been helping people to read in Belize for now 10 years, and completed the Ironman triathlon in my sister's memory in 2007, and was fortunate enough to be awarded the Rhodes Scholarship. So I studied at Oxford, where I read philosophy, politics, and economics. And prior to that was Student Union President at the University of Alberta, after having started at Campus Saint-Jean, of which I am a proud graduate. And my company, Xenix, which I'm now running again, is a CGLCC certified company, so LGBTQ2 certified here in Canada. So that's been a milestone for us. And as I've been telling people, there's life after politics, and so it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, tell us, if we might as well just jump right in.
Sure.
Tell us about your coming out story. What was the scene? What was going on for you?
It's interesting because I've been able to reflect on it a lot as special advisor, because there were a number of opportunities to meet with people one-on-one or in groups, or give remarks, and part of that is reflecting and sharing stories. And I think it's some context is might be helpful. I'm a 1970 baby, so the people very wisely doing the math on the podcast will know that this is a milestone summer birthday. I'm born on July 14th, Bastille Day, and so 50's coming up. And what's interesting is if you think about when I was 20, 21, when I really started to know that I was different, this was not even Ralph Klein's Alberta yet. It was still Don Getty's Alberta. And so we had a whole bunch of fight to come ahead of us with the Delman Green case, and Klein threatening to use the notwithstanding clause. So there weren't even any LGBT actors out. There were no even gay or lesbian characters on TV yet. And so I was convinced that my difference was going to exclude me from society, that I wouldn't be loved, I would lose my family, I wouldn't have any friends, I would never have a job, and absolutely, completely, and utterly forget about politics. And so I knew something was up when I was at university. Now I was already Student Union President, and we had just held a national meeting of like-minded student unions to create a buying group, which would eventually become the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, a competitor, if you will, to the Canadian Federation of Students. But we had just held this big conference, and I had to leave work one day because I didn't have any mental energy to hide anymore. And so my vice president, my friend Terrence, vice president external, said, "You're off. Like, let's just go watch a movie or something. Let's just get out of here." So we did, and I was quiet the whole day. I was quiet because I was in my own head. And he said to me, "What is up with you?" And I said, "What does it mean when I spend more time looking at when a couple's walking down the street and I spend more time focusing on the guy than the girl?" And he says, "I don't know what it means, but you're always going to be my friend." And then I broke down and started crying, and he just gave me a hug. And that was it. And I knew I had one friend in the world. And that's how I built my new identity. Is just off the fact that deep, dark secret wasn't, enough to repel my dear friend Terrence. And so I could at least build from there, but I still was in the closet. Like, I went to Oxford, and I was so deeply in the closet that when the LGBT group would meet every third Thursday, I would be so far from Corpus Christi, my college, but still in the Oxford, precinct, so I could keep my stipend. But you couldn't see me anywhere near Corpus because I simply didn't want to be. I didn't want to face that fear. It was too immediate, too personal. And so I lived my whole life in Oxford. I had a girlfriend, and we would go to London. And Rebecca, at one point, after we'd been to see some Shakespeare at the Barbican, pushed me up against a wall and said, there's something in you that I can't get. There's a wall. There's some part of you that you will just not let me have access to. And she was right, because I couldn't. And later, when I came out and we had a conversation, and she's like, oh my God, I wish I knew my brother's gay. So she went on to a great career in the law in the city in London, and we've stayed in touch. But it's all these lies that we tell ourselves. It's all this fear, and identity is so central to just being able to navigate. So I figure that I probably spent 25 to 30%, maybe even more, of my mental energy just trying to hide and just trying to be a straight guy. And when I came out, people were like, oh my God, this is full you? I'm like, oh yeah. And the other guy's not coming back. Like, could we have 60 or 80% Randy? I'm like, no, you're getting 100% Randy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because since then, and in my political career, I have had young people, and interestingly enough, mostly trans people, come to me and say, people are asking me to be less myself now that I'm in transition. And what do you say to that? I say, tell them to go, tell them to mind their own business, because you are you, and you have to be 100% fully you. And you went through the transition, not to be the person you were before, to be yourself, to be who you're meant to be. And so that living your full self is really important. And it was brought back to me now almost 25 years later when then Minister of International Trade and Diversification Jim Carr and I led the first trade mission of LGBT-owned businesses in Canada to what was then what is still the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce annual summit. And this was in Philadelphia. And we were in this meeting, and it was supplier diversity, and there was 15 Canadian companies, the minister and myself, and there was 50 Fortune 500 companies, each with a rep in this huge ballroom in this big square. It was like cavernous. And I'm like, the Americans are so far ahead of us when it comes to supplier diversity. But after that meeting, and after a couple of other meetings, Jim turns to me and he says, Randy, there's a different vibe here. He's like, everybody's so happy. They're just so comfortable. They're just so relaxed. I'm like, Jim, every single person who's here has had to face the gauntlet and look into the abyss of having nobody around them to be fully who they're meant to be. They don't have any hangups anymore. They're just fully happy to be who they are now. He goes, oh my God, I love the vibration here. He's like, I was an ally before. He's like, now I'm a super ally. That's what happens when you get over all the fear and you can live and be your full self. And I was on a language course to Spain because I made a promise to myself when I took the flight over to Oxford that I would learn 2 other languages. So I started with German and got a basic grounding, and then I picked up Spanish, and it started a lifelong love affair, if you will, with Spanish, with the Latin culture and the countries and the food and the weather and everything. And what was important is that I had the opportunity to go study at Granada, at La Escuela Carmen de las Cuevas, right next to the Alhambra. And one of my colleagues went with me. He's a Canadian, fellow Rhodes Scholar, my friend Philip. And we were in a class. There might have been 8 of us in the class. And what's interesting about learning multiple languages is you learn them in the order, like it's reverse order. So I learned English first, and then French, then Spanish, or then German, then Spanish. So when I was struggling for a Spanish word, I wouldn't go to the English or the French. The German would come out. So people couldn't figure out where I was from. Anyway, one day, the prof, we would have been almost a week into the course, somebody used the word fifi, and the prof heard that, and he was a little concerned, and he said in Spanish, what's a fifi? And this woman from Switzerland leaned over and pointed all the way across the class to me. And then I was gutted because Phil's like, oh my God, my poor friend. And they thought we were a couple. And we weren't. And he was, he was fiancé. He was going to get married. He now has 4 kids. But that was the decision. And that would have probably been, I think that was 96. March of 96, actually. And that's when I decided, no way, that's not happening to me again. And so finished up at Oxford, came back home, negotiated 3 months out to travel with a new company that I was going to work with. And I went on literally a Southeast Asia tour for 3 months with my backpack to kind of shed the old self and realize that I was going to be the new me. And I actually went and talked to friends who were teaching English in Japan and different parts of the world. And that was where the coming out process started. So I literally started about as far away from home as you can. like Japan and Malaysia, and worked my way back to Canada. And then obviously told my family last. And the last person in my family I told was my brother. And he was driving a red truck at the time. I was living just off White Ave, and he pulled up, and we were going to go to Dairy Queen for lunch. And he's in the truck, and he's like, "You're so quiet. What's up?" I said, "I got something to tell you." He's like, "What is it?" I said, "I'm gay." He goes, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "What do you mean you know?" He goes, "Well," he's like, "half your friends are, and you never laugh at any of my jokes. So, of course you are." And I'm like, "That's it?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We still going to Dairy Queen?" We went to Dairy Queen. That was it. And when I told my folks, I mean, I'm adopted, and so was my sister. I told them at the lake, we have a property out at Lac Saint Anne. And when I told them and I came out, I thought, this is it. I'm going to be excommunicated because, we were raised Catholic. And while I was telling my story, I mean, the tears were coming down my face, and they were both smiling at me. And they said, "We knew." And I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And they said, "You had to be ready to tell us yourself."
Right.
And
Or you needed to have the lady in your Spanish class tell you.
well, she had to push me out of the nest, right? And that kicked me out of the closet. And it was interesting. What I actually said to them is, "You adopted a gay baby." And they said, "We knew." And I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And they said, "Because you had to tell us yourself when you were ready." And so, yeah, they said, "We loved you the day we picked you up, and we love you today." And so here are two people, my dad, who, got grade 8 because the nun said, "Don't come back a third time, go work the fields and we'll give you your grade 8. And my mom with a grade 12 education, who at the core of it, it's love. And I was their son and always was going to be their son. And finally faced up with, to my fears and identity. And then I never looked back, and life's been amazing ever since.
That's amazing. What a beautiful posture from your parents.
Well, it was, oh, look, I will keep my friend's identity a secret. But so I was 27 at the time. And I wanted to come out before my brother's wedding because he was getting married that summer. And I wanted to bring my partner at the time, not as a friend, in quotes, right? I wanted to bring my partner. And, but a friend of mine, that same weekend that I came out to my folks, came out to his folks in rural Alberta. And both, one a doctor, one a lawyer. And that weekend they were going to send him to camp. They were sending him to conversion therapy
camp. Wow.
Yep. And all religious based, because it wasn't about him. It was about them. Right. Because when you come out, you out your parents.
Yeah.
And so at the wedding, because my cousin got married first and then my brother got married, my dad could feel that something was different because I was with my partner and I was more relaxed, and he couldn't, because this was his first public event being outed, so to speak. And he couldn't quite converse with my partner and me, but he kept bringing us drinks. Nice. that was his way to say, it was a toonie bar or a loony bar at the time, and that was his way to say, "I love you, but I don't know how to handle this, so I'm just going to give you drinks because we both need to get drunk." All three of us need the happy juice to get through this, and that's been great. I mean, my partner David and I now 2.5 years, and my mom refers to us. So there's my brother and I now. My sister passed away in 97, and I didn't get to tell her, and that's a big regret. I was going to tell her, and she passed away. I'd been back from Oxford for 9 days, and I lost my little sister. And medical science still doesn't know why. And she was at her desk at work. She'd taken a gap year and collapsed at her desk and was at the hospital within 20 minutes, and she was gone en route. And fully healthy 20-year-old, flaming red hair, amazing woman, amazing temper, taught me how to read fast. She was a speed reader, and I didn't even know that was a thing. And what's amazing is that you can't wait. Like when you get that close, you just got to tell people, because you literally don't know what's going to happen the next day. And so my mom now refers to David and me and Mark as her boys. So she likes having her boys out at the lake. So
that's awesome. I totally get that feeling of needing to kind of extricate yourself from your normal life and figure it out, and then kind of re-enter. I
was in the back of a jeepney in the Philippines, and my friends were clever because they made me stay with like extended relatives because they were concerned for safety. But that meant I couldn't explore. Like I couldn't go to Manila, I couldn't go to any of the bars. I was like with the family. And as I left their island, in the back of a jeepney to get to the boat, I could just feel that old self washing out of me. Because it was the first time that I was starting to get the eyes from the guys. Like, the guys were starting to get that I was on their team and they were trying to communicate, but I couldn't do anything because I wasn't staying in a hotel. I wasn't solo. But I remember grieving on that trip. I remember a lot of times where I would just have to, let that old self go.
Right. I left Commercial Drive in Vancouver, which I would call the lesbian capital of Canada, and moved to conservative Calgary and came out because I think I felt that anonymity where I was like not in the spotlight so much. My normal life, I had a practice there where I met with people and helped them listen to their soul, and I was like, they will never listen to me if I come out, like especially in conservative Christian circles, like, woof, no way. But here I felt a little bit of anonymity and was able to explore it for myself, and had a very similar experience at a bar in Mexico where someone was like, I don't know if you're gay, but I think you might be gay. It's like, I'm outed. But also sometimes we need that little push to get us going.
And you can build your own identity in a new place, right? And if family is weird or tough or challenging, then like so many of us do, we build our own family, right? And you just define family in a new way. And I think what's important, particularly this summer as we're doing this podcast, is identifying and remembering that people have built their families, and that, some of what we thought was the family of activism and rights in the, in the 80s, the 90s, and into the 2000s, once we got some rights, then people left other parts of the family behind. Like, people forgot about people of color and trans people and some of the fiercest activists and, defenders of rights, still to this day feel, left behind. And so the intersectionality of the movement, the intersectionality of rights, I mean, I was very surprised by the United States Supreme Court decision, very heartened by it. But that vigilance when it comes to our rights is really important. It just takes, a provincial premier or a court at some point to rule against us, and then we have a whole bunch more work ahead of us. And so I think that sense of community and making sure that everybody gets to enjoy their full rights. I just read an article this morning that in the workplace, what prevents people from either wanting to be part of the workplace or moving up is a sense of onlyness. It was a McKinsey article. And the more intersectionalities you have, the more chances are you're the only person like you in that company, even a big company, right? So if you are a racialized person who's also trans, how many people like you are in that company, even a big bank or a big insurance company? And so if you don't have anybody else to relate to, if your single onlyness is a double or triple onlyness, then you're not going to want to stay, and you're going to want to try to do something else. And that's where, a lot of members of the community get trapped in the gig economy or precarious employment or other ways to, just basically meet their basic needs that, can lead to harm and violence and other situations.
Thanks for listening to the Coming Out Chronicles. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. And if you think it would be helpful for someone else, please share it with them. If you'd like to connect with me, reach out on social. I'd love to support you on the next chapter of your coming out story. Until next time, this is Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching.